Come with me back to the 12th century in search of old wisdom for new times. Europe in the 1100s was living through the high Middle Ages. It was a time of growing population, of exodus from the rural regions, growing urbanisation amid a process of cultural renaissance. It was the high point of knights and chivalry. It was just a few decades after the Eastern Orthodox churches had split from the Catholic churches of the West. And of course, the first of the Crusades had occurred late in the previous 11th century. And into this vibrant and interesting world came a man who was destined to become recognised as one of the most cultured and wise people of all Europe, a man called Bernard of Clairvaux. Bernard was a monk and a reforming abbot, the founder of the great monastery of Clairvaux, destined to be one of the spiritual powerhouses of Europe for over 5 centuries. He was a writer. He was a diplomat in affairs of both church and state. And he crisscrossed Europe at the height of his career, making peace and bringing reconciliation between warring rulers, between rival church leaders, and even between 2 alternative popes vying for the office. Today we might look askance at some of his work, such as championing the Second Crusade. But if you read his works, you will find a person of great sensitivity, artistic skill, humanity, and wisdom. You may have heard of some of his sayings which have passed into the Western tradition, even if you don't know where they came from. Here are some of the gems of his thought. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. What we love, we shall grow to resemble. He who loves me also loves my dog. What I know of the divine science and the Holy Scriptures, I have learnt in the woods and the fields. You have probably sung some of his hymns, perhaps without knowing from whence they came. Jesus, thou joy of loving hearts. Jesus, the very thought of thee with sweetness fills my breast. O sacred head, sore wounded. He was a great letter writer, and in all his books, letters and sermons, there is great spiritual wisdom and a deep and warm humanity. He was capable of subtle humour. I have it on very good authority from one of the world's great teachers of the works of St. Bernard that there is a delightful play on words within his sermons on the Song of Songs. The play of words is between 2 Latin words, the words deificato, meaning to become like God, to be divinized, and the very similar word defecato, meaning to defecate. And in this play on words, Bernard is suggesting that becoming more like God is just a matter of getting rid of our crap. But there is one saying of his that I have always loved. It comes from his book On Consideration, a manual of life and management that was written for the new Pope, Eugenius III, around the year 1150. And the saying that I treasure is this: be ignorant of many things, neglect even more, and forget about some. This must be the only management manual in the history of the world that urges ignorance, neglect, and forgetfulness. Now, Bernard is talking here of the world of finance and administrative affairs. And what he's saying to Eugenius is, when it comes to all that practical stuff, get a steward. Just don't get involved yourself in all that stuff. Concentrate on the spiritual, on the moral things. Pick your staff well and don't micromanage them. Look not to the activities that they're doing, but to their character, their appearance, their conversation, their dress. These are the things that matter. And if you choose people who get those things right, they will manage well your affairs. Now, the title of the book is the big hint as to what its focus is. It is talking about how you focus your thinking, your attention, the matters to which you will choose to give consideration. In the last number of decades, we have lived through a terrible Christian abuse scandal in this country, and that is the scandal of child abuse. And that scandal came about because we chose to ignore many things, we neglected even more, and we chose to forget about some. We misapplied the advice of Bernard of Clairvaux. Why was that? Well, we were more concerned with the appearance of goodness than its substance. We were more concerned with the wealth of the church than the health and the safety of its members. We were giving consideration to the wrong things. And that's directly the opposite of what Bernard was encouraging us to do. His advice is sage and very helpful for those of us who are living in an information age. There is so much clamouring for our attention, calling for our consideration. And one of the skills we need to develop in this is a chastity of gaze, a discernment governing our powers of attention. Amid the flood of social media, the clamour of radio and TV, the daily barrage of the inbox, Bernard's words speak wisdom and promise sanity. Be ignorant of many things, neglect even more, and forget about some. I've recently found a companion volume to Bernard's On Consideration. It was written 864 years later and is simply entitled What's Best Next? Where Bernard sets me free to ignore and neglect and forget, Matt Perman in this new book gives me some positive principles about what to focus on. Do what's best next. What will help someone? What will have the most positive leverage? What will do the most good? Some years ago, when a colleague of mine left the ministry to become the CEO of an organisation with 400 staff, I asked him how it was going. "Oh, it's a piece of cake," he said. "If there's anything needs doing, there's someone there to do it. I just delegate the work and then manage it. It is so much easier than the ministry." You see, the ministry is one vocation where the work is never done. There is always someone else to help, someone to pray for, a sermon to write, a video to record, a meeting to prepare. And you can never keep all of the balls in the air. This is one of the greatest sources of ministry burnout, just as the barrage of information that confronts us all today is a great source of overload and stress, yes, even burnout. So thank God for Bernard of Clairvaux, that spiritual giant who understood that the ways of God and a life worth living can be guarded and guided through godly ignorance, neglect, and forgetfulness. Be ignorant of many things, neglect even more, and forget about some. Hallelujah.